All right. Okay. Well, here we are on a Friday, January 26th, 2024. First peace education interview for the new year. I hope you're all doing well, and just settling in for a nice conversation with my good friend Zenki, Kathleen, Batson, the Chapel Hill Zen Center, and other ways that I've known you throughout our friendship together. I'm so excited to be here. I just wanted to, first of all, thank you so much for carving some time out of your Friday, out of your life today, and definitely want to um, just bask in your sunshine
It's so
through
nice to
Zoom.
see you. I'm just happy to spend time with you, Christy.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, we can just dive on in.
Okay, let's dive.
Let's dive together. Um, and so yes, peace education, I like to kind of just give a brief little description of what I understand peace education to be.
Mhm.
Um, because I know it's not a term that is very common in the kind of parlance of of folks. And so I was first introduced to peace education. I don't know if it was kind of like how you were, because you and I met doing Montessori education at a school in North Carolina, which I mean, being kind of a spiritual seeker in my life, Montessori just felt good as the kind of teacher I wanted to be because it had a very cosmic pulse throughout every movement and lesson that you do with children. So
Mhm.
peace education, it's about helping the process of transforming the hearts and minds of folks and society towards peace. And the term came out of World War II when the United Nations were uh, it, when they were when the United Nations, the institution was constructed, wanting to put as much time towards peace, the study of peace, as this to the study of war. And so disarmament, um, disarmament efforts and peace and conflict resolution kind of methodologies and practices were introduced there. And then has become an umbrella term, just incorporating human rights, environmental work, children's rights, which brought me to, Montessori, and she was very much a peace educator and children's rights advocate and
Mhm.
spoke a lot at the United Nations. But also, she spent time in the East because her spiritual foundation was in Catholicism. But when she spent time in India and
Mhm.
learned more about Eastern religions, it kind of made her Montessori education, just the kind of spiritual foundation, a lot more robust. Um, she came up with the whole cosmic education. And so that's kind of how I met you teaching Montessori, and then I met you and you introduced me to Buddhism, which
Oh, I did.
I mean, I kind of knew it before, but yeah, it was mostly you, and I really see that as a huge, like, new chapter in my kind of spiritual life and just understanding of the world. I had a kind of a rough disillusionment and disenchantment of a time when I was pretty a devoted Catholic, and then my going to college, and that started just to widen and expose parts of that way of belief system that I couldn't connect with much more, and not to say that I don't um connect with it still in different ways, but I don't know, Buddhism seemed to just not feel healthier for me.
Mhm.
Um, and so I just, first of all, do you mind sharing with us where you are now? Because I've known you in different stages of your journey. And so today, what is your title? Like, what is your profession?
Well, now I full time I'm devoted to the temple. So I no longer teach toddlers in a Montessori classroom. Um, and I'm the vice abbess at the Chapel Hill Zen Center. So I just am sort of the assistant helper to the abbess in running our daily program. We have in-person zazen Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings, Tuesday evenings, Sunday mornings. We have Zoom zazen. And zazen is Zen meditation. We have 2 study groups. So just making sure that opportunity is available to people, and helping organize events and ceremonies and giving Dharma talks and meeting with people, providing Zazen instruction for people new to the center. So my whole
Yeah.
world now revolves around the Zen Center. So that's
That's
where I am now.
well, it's, that was like 30 seconds, but I know it's been so many years of your kind of devoted practice that's led you to that. And congratulations again. That was pretty recently when you became Vice Abbess, is that correct?
Yes. Trying to remember what the date was. I received what's called Dharma transmission on January 1st of 2023, and that's with my Dharma brother and Dharma sister, and that is sort of the official experience of your teacher saying, "I give you permission to teach others now." So that was relatively recent, and I think the Vice Abbess installation ceremony was September, I want to say. I think it was I don't know. COVID has sort of changed my ability to track time somehow, but I think it was just September. So yeah, relatively recently.
Yeah. So many wonderful years leading up to this position. Does it feel like kind of a dream come true?
That it's dream come true. It sort of all happened very slowly. Very, I've been here studying with my teacher for 23 years. That's sort of like, wow, how did that happen? And I have been, I first read Zen Mind Beginner's Mind in 6th grade. So I first tried meditating then. And I
In
thought, well,
sixth grade.
yeah.
Where did you find this book in sixth grade?
I have older brothers and sisters, and my older brother and his friends would always hang out at our house on Thursday nights and smoke a lot of weed. And one of his friends, one of our neighbors and friends, said, "Oh, Fuzzy, you would really like this book. I think you'd like this book." And he lent it to me. So early on, I was looking, and then I started sort of practicing regularly at about 19. So there were many years before I came here where I was sort of looking for a teacher and thought, if I find the right situation, I think that I would want to ordain. But it felt very abstract, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And when I met my teacher, I felt like, oh, I think this person is my teacher. It immediately felt that way for me. But it I don't it never really felt like ordaining was a goal to get to. It was more that it would be an expression of something, and I really had to discern for a long time whether that felt like the right expression, like I wanted to make it outwardly known what my internal intentions were. I don't know if that makes sense. So it all sort of happened very
Yeah.
slowly.
Yeah. Because it is a kind of public, it is a kind of, sorry.
Hello. Okay.
She says hello. um, it is a kind of public role,
Yes.
and meditation is so personal. I would say part is one way to think of it is so inward. Um,
Mm.
is that an element of what you mean?
Um, well, t what I went through at a certain point was because ultimately Zen Buddhism is talking about how there is no independent self,
Right.
how everything's co-arising. And so it felt like a contradiction. Like, why, if there's no independent self, why would I do this thing that sort of defines me specifically in a specific way? That was my contradiction. Like, why would I? And also, to be honest, Soto Zen is Buddhism as it came from India through China through Japan, and it's been in the United States 100 years. We had like the 100-year anniversary. I think that was last year or the year before. Um, and it's culturally very Japanese looking, and so there was also this
Mhm.
discomfort. Do I have I'm this white person and I'm going to wear clothes that look Japanese. And is this right? Is this okay? I struggle with
Mhm.
that too. Like, where's the balance between loving these teachings and wanting to share these teachings and what's appropriate and not, so there was just a
Yeah,
lot of questioning for
absolutely.
me, um, a lot of questioning about it. And in the meanwhile, it was sort of kept being whole ride kept rolling along. So um
Yeah, yeah. A very kind of a slow day by day revelation of what feels good and deciding if you want to keep going that way or that way with it
mhm.
all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also just because things co-arise, having a whole sangha and a teacher who have expectations or interests in you being there to help with things, so that you know
Mhm.
this arose in relation to all those people too, right? It wasn't just me. So
Right. And can you
yeah.
tell us what a sangha is?
Sangha is community. Well, it's funny because there's different layers of what Sangha is. So initially it was the practitioners who practiced with the Buddha. And then through time, it became all the practitioners of Buddhism. Or you could say our Chapel Hill Zen Center Sangha, which is everybody who comes and practices with us. But it's sort of the big picture level. Sangha is all beings, you know, all beings are,
Yeah.
are our Sangha.
Ah, and also to make sure that you and I are kind of little sangha right here.
Sangha too.
It's like, I know. I want to, respect your time. And so was it until 4 o'clock? That sounds good to you? Or
Sure.
4:15?
Yeah. Either way, I
Okay.
put aside an hour, so I'm good till
Oh, okay.
4:30.
Oh, okay. I wanted to do that bit of housekeeping.
Sure.
Um, and so I have here some of the questions I sent to you before, but I also already want to go off
Mm-hmm.
and just go with some questions that arise because yes, we met doing Montessori, but we also did music together,
Yes.
and and that and we did some kind of I would say like pensive rock,
Pensive.
alt
Girl on a cliff. Rock.
alt rock together. It was beautiful,
We
and
did.
yeah, Kathleen, I just accompanied Kathleen's melodic rides that she would invite me on, and I'm so thankful for that time together. I was wondering, I'm not, I'm kind of thinking of vinyl or CDs or cassette tapes, like what kind of accompanied you on your spiritual journey through
Huh.
different albums or
Oh,
musicians or songs
oh, what
initial,
an
like
oh wow, what an interesting question.
how did that kind of braid into your journey? Like, did you have
Hmm,
formative albums back in the day?
interesting. You know, I listen to music a lot less than I used to, um, because the quiet is so pleasing so often. But let me think about this. What initially comes to mind is, I was a child, well, young in the 70s, teenager in the 80s. The U2 album Boy was very important to me
Oh,
in that I had to listen to it by myself. It was my album that I wouldn't listen to with other people, and it was sort of this space I created for myself. Um,
mm,
I've never really thought about music. I mean, I was raised by musicians, so
right, right.
yeah. So classical um, Christian music was a big part of my environment. So Handel's
Mm,
Messiah was performed
mm,
by my father's choir every year since I was a child until, he retired. And
mm.
that music, um, I tried to be Christian growing up at the church where my father was music director. Um, and
Oh,
there's something very glorious about that music for me. Um,
mm,
and hmm,
that
it
kind of
ties me to family.
yeah. Um, it's yeah. Music can be such an expression of the spiritual um
Mhm.
experience. Yeah,
But
definitely.
I would say something that really influenced me was hearing John Abercrombie and Jack DeJohnette, and the album was called Gateways. Gateways or Gateways. Actually, I think it's right here.
Wow.
Yes. This album,
Ooh,
because I
that's
found it again. This is Gateway 2. Dave Holland, John Abercrombie, and Jack DeJohnette. I was listening to that in like junior high, and it's jazz, and it's not standard jazz. It's very kind of out there, and it's spacious. I appreciate
mm,
spacious music. The
mm,
Cocteau Twins, um,
mm,
but I don't know. I listen to a wide variety of music. I appreciate
mm,
being able to listen to music that um, reflects my emotions. So growing up, I had, dealt with a lot of conflict and
mm.
upset and anger, etc. So,
Are you
yeah,
into punk rock?
I was not ever really super into punk. I was more
Mm-hmm.
Susie and the Banshees, The Cure.
Mm-hmm.
I was more of a
Yeah,
depressed kid. My
yeah.
anger was more internal than sent outward, I think. So,
Mm,
but yeah, I've never really thought about music influencing spirituality, but I think that album Gateway 2 would be something that I could say,
that's cool.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It is interesting. It not that it always kind of corresponds, but to look at the albums or the artists you were listening to at that time in your life, and the chapters that the music was a soundtrack for of
Mm-hmm.
of not only spiritual journey, but other parts of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I'll say Miles Davis too. There was a long period of like only listening to Miles Davis.
a, a genius.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. I mean, um, I took a class on history of jazz in the I mean, yeah, in the US, and I just kind of was like, this is all ingenious, uh, expression of coming from like the blues, which came out of slavery, it just ingenious way to turn pain into these incredible fusions of sounds and poetry and everything. And so, yeah, that's really cool. I didn't
Well,
really listen to much jazz until high school.
mm-hmm.
I got into just the classic Billie Holiday and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sarah Vaughan,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ella Fitzgerald, and then yes, all the kind of Miles Davis, John Coltrane,
Mm-hmm.
um, Mount, just the brilliant. I love how jazz lets you take turns, like different
Mm-hmm.
musicians, they take turn, and all the other
Mm-hmm.
musicians respect that so much for the other musician to shine for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Improv and music, and then they go back to like
Yeah.
their togetherness, and that's just it's so selfless kind of art form.
Yeah. Two thoughts occurred to me. One being how be acknowledging what one is feeling, um, I think is part of how like you can't to be able to navigate through an emotion, it's good to know what it is, and music can accompany that or help it
Yeah,
be clear
yeah,
what one is feeling. And then the other thing that I thought of while you were describing that aspect of jazz is just how also it's like life in that it'll fall apart where you're like,
yeah,
where did the I can't even find the tune and what is this? And then,
yeah,
you're just completely all loose and falling apart. And then whoop, okay, here we are. It's all back together. It just
yeah.
feels like life. So
Yeah, that it's okay. And I feel so much about like how my parents, sometimes I think back to their parenting of me and how they wanted to kind of, although kind of harshly, teach that type of life, how to handle that type of life, that it's not always going to be the
mm-hmm.
chorus and the refrain, like this
Mm-hmm.
kind of sheet music that you follow, that it's, there's good, just throw stuff at you without any preparation or kind of nurturing you to something, just gonna throw you, you know, into the fire and you figure it out and make sense of it.
Mm-hmm.
To a point, to your edge,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
of what is not gonna break you, or which is not entirely healthy. But it made me think of a Buddhist story I maybe read or maybe I heard when I came to the Zen Center years ago, um, about a practitioner in a Buddhist kind of communal practicing retreat area, I think, or maybe it was like a monastery, but this one Buddhist practitioner had his own hut and just came to so many beautiful, enlightening moments in his um, meditation practice in the hut, and felt so safe in there, and just felt like this is life. This is how to live in peace. And I think then the leader teacher set it on fire
Mm-hmm.
in terms just to kind of teach him you can't retreat from the world, you can't get comfortable staying away from all conflict and pain in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not life. To feel safe and secure all the time, or,
Mm-hmm.
just to block everything out in your life and just
Mm-hmm.
feel your own safety. Um, and I think about that too because Buddhism gave me so much clarity, and like you say, the silence is so beautiful, and meditation can really help you feel those emotions arise, and you can have distance from it and name it, and kind of let it pass and work to understand it. Like those skills that you can cultivate in a quiet space, in a meditative space, are what can anchor you when you're in a totally opposite situation in your life. You know, it,
Yeah.
it, uh, I wondered if you could speak to that a little bit, especially
Yeah.
in the world we live now, where there's so
Well,
much just, yeah.
what occurred to me as you were speaking is, at least in the Mahayana tradition, the vow is to live to benefit all being, that it's about relationship, and that the Buddha often said, I only teach two things: suffering, the causes of suffering, and the end of suffering. And, part of understanding suffering is understanding how we misunderstand reality,
Mm-hmm.
and one of those things we need to understand is everything is impermanent and all things are interconnected. And we have this tendency to think of ourselves as a separate self, and we either grasp at things or we reject things. This constant grasping and rejecting is like the very basis of all suffering. So sitting there in
Mm-hmm.
that silence, part of what you're doing, sitting there in that silence, sitting still, is watching what arises, experiencing things through the senses, and things arise and noticing what they are, and not even necessarily labeling, but loosening the grasp, loosening the grasping at or pushing away. So, the feeling of sorrow comes up, open,
Mm-hmm.
relax. Hmm. And that, and as you were saying, that practicing that ability to stay present to what is, to what is arising when you're just being still and not engaging, practicing it in that at that situation makes it easier than when you're engaging with someone else to stay open to whatever's arising, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I was thinking about this because I knew we'd be talking, and I was thinking about my classroom, like when I was a toddler teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And um, to me, the classroom was just so often um, like this little microcosm of what society could be, of a beautiful, peaceful society. And part of it was giving, I felt, children the tools to navigate situations that were invariably going to arise for them. So even 2 year olds could hold their hand out when somebody took something and say, even if they didn't have language, to imply, may I have it back, and giving them, you always hear about terrible twos, but really they want to get along. I think humans, and I feel like Buddhism teaches this at the core, like the first noble truth: there is suffering. Okay, that's just a reality. There will be suffering. And nobody likes suffering, you know? And if I want to be happy and feel okay, so does everybody else. And understanding that reality, is kind of how
Mhm.
you navigate.
Mm,
And
yeah,
as a
yeah.
teacher, I feel like the places where being a teacher of 12 toddlers in a space would become
Mhm,
difficult, I noticed it would be if my expectation, what I wanted, wasn't happening.
mm,
So I was grasping either at what I wanted or rejecting what was happening. And so for example, if I had to work with a lot of water and involved
mhm,
in it, I had to know that
mhm,
some toddlers are gonna see what it's like to pour it all over the floor because
mhm,
that's what they do. So,
mhm,
and then you have to, and then in that moment, the thing is about, oh, it's all over the floor. The floor's wet. Let's clean it up. Just dealing with what's actually happening instead of what I want. Right.
mhm.
So I just feel like that's sort of a core element of Zen Buddhist teachings is being open to what is actually happening and noticing what's arising and responding from a place of non-harming in that moment. That's,
Mm.
I don't know if I responded to your question. I kind of went off there.
I think, yeah, definitely. Place of non-harming. Oh, that's something as a parent I'm trying to practice every day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, and so, yeah, you kind of mentioned your Montessori classroom and how you brought in your kind of Buddhist beliefs in there. How would you, how do you feel about the term peace education and Buddhism being
Um,
together
it makes sense
somehow?
to me that they would be together. They're words, so they're concepts, so
Hmm, hmm,
I'm always a little
hmm,
leery about words in general, although they're very
hmm,
useful, right? When we're having a
hmm,
wonderful conversation. Um, Trying to
hmm,
think, peace education as a term is a bit amorphous for me, you know,
hmm,
what it actually means. I first
hmm.
I first met the term at Wayne State University, where I first went to school because they had a peace and conflict studies program, and I
Oh,
took a course in an honors course. Whoa, hi Kat. A peace and conflict studies class.
neat.
But and then of course there's the peace education element in Montessori, which is, I sometimes watch that with the elementary children, and that was very fascinating to me. Like,
Mm,
so what am I trying to say? Conceptually, at a conceptual level, peace education makes sense as a concept. Um,
yeah.
but
Uh,
ultimately for me, it's about um, embodying. So it's about moment to moment behavior decisions. So like if I were to wear my okesa and have my kotsu and be all, I'm Miss Priest Lady, but I were to walk around the zendo and throw stuff around and be angry and stomp around, then you know that there's
yeah.
no
Well,
peace there, even if I look the part. So it's about
well, yeah.
the, yeah, the actual
exactly. I mean,
moment.
yes, I feel like so much of what I came to all my kind of spiritual um uh parts of my journey, and Montessori being one of them. It is, I'm so attracted to how you say the ideals, the values, the concepts. The human application is something else. And that kind of journey of humans wanting to apply like Buddhism or peace education ideals into their everyday lives or into their classrooms, that is where you kind of have that journey of recognizing the suffering that can come up because you're trying to apply these concepts, and there are things inside of you that come up and can really come into conflict with the application of these ideals.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is that whole kind of um, relationship with humans and these wonderful ideals that come out of
Mhm.
meditation or come out of these spiritual traditions. That's so much of what life is.
Mhm.
And it seems like with Buddhism, it gives such a great practice on how to continue to bolster and nurture that process. Is
Yeah.
that one
Yeah.
way to look at it?
Well, yeah, a lot of interesting thoughts came up for me listening to you. One being, I love the word embody, to
Yes.
embody, and that another thought that came up is that these concepts are also human. Like peace, the concept of peace is how a human articulates with an
Mm.
idea something that either exists or doesn't exist, right?
Can you repeat
So,
that? Peace
um,
is a
well,
way a human
so
articulates.
yeah, peace is a peace.
Oh, yeah, let's look
So,
at that word, peace.
right. Well, what I'm thinking is there's because we were talking about the ideals and then human behavior, but the ideals, creating ideals is a human behavior. Like
Yes, it is.
humans created the ideals.
That's right.
So, um, I can't repeat anymore what I said. I think I said peace is a concept that articulates, that humans use
Yeah.
to articulate something that's either happening or not happening. Um, but it's our lens to call it peace. So
Mm.
when you were speaking, it really struck me because if it if it were easy to be peaceful, we would have a peaceful world, right? Is
Yeah.
what I believe. And one of the things that drew really one of my motivations in life on a spiritual path was growing up in a household where ideals would be espoused, but the behavior was not aligned with it. And they were
Mhm.
very much in conflict, behavior and what was espoused and what was presented to the outer world and what occurred in our home were very different
Mhm.
things. And that was for me just a, and having people I love deeply behave that way was sort of like, and it's where Christianity fell apart for me because I was like, the framework of Christianity didn't explain it, because you'd have to say either the person is good or they're sinning. It, there, there was no structure for me to say, why is this happening? Why is this person, I know this person doesn't want to cause all this pain and suffering, and yet look at our lives. So I,
Mhm.
and I,
Mm.
and it was painful on all these various levels. You love this person, you see they're in pain, you see they're causing pain, you know,
Mhm.
and it was a motivation very young to that I thought, I want my behavior and my ideas to be aligned. I want
Yeah.
them to be in sync. You know, how do I do that? And just Christianity, I just felt like there's no tools for me to get
Mhm.
there. Whereas with Buddhism, it wasn't saying you're bad or you're good. It was saying, hey, there's suffering. Suffering comes about through grasping and rejecting, greed, hate, and delusion of how things arise. It's not seeing things how they're really working. Suffering leads to further suffering. If you don't want to create suffering, here's a pathway to follow to try to eliminate suffering. And it wasn't really like it's good or bad. It's just like, hey, you know, you don't want it. Nobody wants it. Um, so it kind of took away. I needed that too, because I felt like in a Christian structure, there's a bit of it's almost a patronizing. If I see this person behaving in a way that's harmful, then they're sinning, and then I will
Mhm.
help them, or they need to change it.
Mhm.
I don't know how to articulate this, but it didn't
Authoritative
it
kind of.
didn't feel like it truly understood it, or where you were saying, yeah, and I do that too. We all do this. We all create suffering. It didn't give the opening to be compassionate in a way where you're saying, oh, I get why that person is creating this suffering. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean I'm going to tolerate them being harmful, but yeah,
There's more empathy,
it just felt like
and
it explained it in a
yes.
way that it made more sense. Like, this is the human condition of
Mhm.
why we suffer, how we're doing it, and um
Yeah.
yeah. So
I I I had similar feelings. And when we started, I talked about it feeling just so healthy.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Um, when I was learning about the frameworks of Buddhism, and I know there are different strains of Christianity that have different, levels of kind of the guilt and the shame and the authoritative elements
mm-hmm,
in it. I know when my husband describes his Episcopal church growing up, it was very open. So,
mm-hmm,
but
mm-hmm.
still, you bring that up, and one of my questions that I had sent you, and I want to keep track of our time because I could talk to you forever.
See you later. We'll talk again
No,
soon.
I know, but I want to share with everyone. There's so much cultural, societal, political um, forces nowadays that are just kind of extremely extreme, and a
Mm-hmm,
lot of it uh, about what humans, the human condition, what they click on, what they are get addicted to, and peace and healing does it, it doesn't seem to come close to the number of clicks humans choose, or maybe are not really choosing because they're not totally conscious, but to click that are motivated by hate and rage and fear and suffering.
when
Like
you
the so when the like the suffer, I'm clarifying, like when, for example, social media,
mm-hmm,
internet, you kind of can see the human condition get accelerated to this technological extreme in terms of humans click and crave content that is more motivated and showing fear, pain, anger, outrage, um, then what there's wonderful content, and I try to make it here that is more for healing and um, peace and helping us with this journey, ending suffering. Um, I don't know if you've had any thoughts about how Buddhism can help this another chapter in human history where the we have a whole political party that just thrives on pumping hate and judgment, authoritarian
Mm-hmm.
kind of um, humanity into the world.
It's interesting. There's a lot there. One thing that strikes me is it seems that the way social media functions is that everybody's content is, I mean, is mediated, is structured according to what they've chosen in the past. And so it becomes sort of this rabbit hole of only seeing things that affirm what you've already read or already thought, um, which kind of mimics, I think, in a way, how our brain works. If, because we we have the raw experience of the world and then we filter it through our past experiences. And if I look at a certain person who I saw behaving harmfully, and I always say to myself, oh, that person is a this or that, then I'm reaffirming that in my mind. I'm trying to articulate how I think our brain works and how social media, they both do the same thing in sort of creating these pathways of having the same types of thoughts over and over. Like
Mm-hmm.
the more you
Mm-hmm.
think the more you think something, the more you're
Mm-hmm.
affirming it for yourself. And with social media, the more you look at something, the more social media
Puts it
sends
in
it
front of
back
you.
to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The algorithm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems comparable.
Yeah.
And I,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I've been, I have people that I care about who seem to have become more extreme in their views in the past 5 years, 10,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's an interesting thing to navigate. And I guess I still keep coming to the place of, I still keep coming to the place of staying open
Mm-hmm.
and hearing what they're saying to me and trying to understand where they're coming from. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so within our family, there's some different there's political divide. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes what I'll see is, let's just say, you know, Biden supporter, Trump supporter, to be very blunt about it,
Mm-hmm.
they'll come at something both in the same way that they're both right and the other person's wrong and stupid. And it just gets ugly. The energy's ugly. And it doesn't seem helpful to hold tightly to a view in those conversations. Like I've come to this space where my listening to somebody fully and respectfully and trying to understand where they're coming from does not imply that I agree with them. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean I agree if that I'm willing to listen, but being heard helps people hear themselves. Something I feel like
Mm,
I've noticed is
really?
yeah, what I feel like I've noticed is if, at least in my family, in a conversation, if somebody says something that feels off to me and I counter it, I disagree with it, then this position gets restated firmer,
Mm,
to push back on this.
mm-hmm,
But if if a family member says something that feels off to me, and I instead say, huh, I've never thought of it that way. Tell me about that. How'd you come to that? Like, try to really actually be open and have them talk more. Then instead of feeling this, instead of reaffirming the initial argument, there's more opening on their part. And then
mm-hmm.
there's just more space in the conversation for,
For you to say your
well,
it.
or for it to open up. And it's
Mm-hmm,
almost like I think of the term opening the hand of thought, which is kind of like
mm-hmm,
it's which is Uchiyama Roshi, but not grasping the idea so tightly, but being willing to explore it more. Like it takes courage to
mm-hmm,
say, I'm going to be willing to listen to you and really try to understand how you've come to this view. It takes courage because the initial response is, oh my gosh, that's, I can't believe you voted for this guy. He's awful. But there's something about allowing real conversation to happen and willingness to hear someone. This is totally just my view, and part of it is that I'm dealing with my family and I love them.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
it
Yeah.
um
Well,
but it sometimes
yeah.
makes it their ideas, they start to question their ideas themselves. We can if I'm willing to question my strongly held beliefs, you know,
Mm-hmm,
it helps another person question their really strongly held beliefs. That's been my experience.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so much division
Mm-hmm.
and it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
And I have kind of been exercising that practice myself because I've always felt um that division is scary. It can lead to a really scary place for the country or um my sense of wanting peace in the world,
Mm-hmm.
but also understand that in our it, we need to make sure we don't let these kind of powerful forces of more hateful rhetoric
Mm-hmm.
um, take power. And a lot of that has gotten into powerful, I mean, the president position of power,
Yeah.
uh, and Congress people and elections around the country. And what used to be on the fringes
Mm-hmm.
in these kind of hateful hate war, I mean, are now coming into the mainstream. And so it's a time where yes, we have to stop feeding the division beast,
Mhm.
as well as figure out how to get the beast out of these portals of democracy where
Yeah.
they've entered. And people would, a lot of people would say they've been there for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
um I mean, absolutely, but it's coming to a different level, I think.
mhm.
And across the world. And I know we have 5 minutes. we
We're
can
gonna solve it
we're
now.
starting to let's solve the world problems, Zenki.
Well, I would just say what you're saying is really important. And I was speaking, at this one-on-one level of
Mhm, mhm.
engagement with people. And um
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
then
me too.
and how to the a place of real need of exploration for me is how do you create that type of openness
Mhm.
to one another institutionally, or with larger groups or organizations. I've noticed that organizations that are fundamentally fighting for things I believe in, if their language is if their language feels divisive, then I
Mhm.
don't then I don't I choose not to participate in that, because I feel like that
Mhm.
strengthens the other side, that like there's this, I don't know. And I know plenty of people say, yeah, but this isn't, if it feels like the ultimate issue of humans, that
Mhm.
are we going to respond the way humans always have, with defensiveness and righteousness and fighting? Or do we have other tools, other ways? And ultimately, not everybody would choose the same way, right? And
Mhm.
I'm I'm kind of lucky in that I've made vows. So I have an excuse to say, well, I made a vow to approach life this way. And so that's that's how I'm going to try to do it till I die. And maybe it'll work or maybe it won't, but this is, I've made this commitment. It's not my place to tell other people what their commitment should be or how they should do it, but this is what I'll try. you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. No, I have very similar commitments, and I I feel that yeah, we're going to need voices out there to counter just all these powerful voices that are about divisiveness. So I think it what we can cultivate personally for ourselves and in our families and communities is is what will from the what will help the movement towards a more peaceful society. And it also needs to happen institutionally. And so there are different roles for different people.
right, of
Um,
course.
and so, but I agree with you. I have been in situations where, different groups claim to be progressive, but their language is so, we don't want any of this, or this kind of person into this group.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Just like, um, so yeah, we all sides need to take time to stay open and not get, what was the word I felt the other day that it makes you feel? It makes you just feel rigid. Some ideals that you want to, um, be such, I don't say mama bear because I'm a mama bear about protecting my child,
Mhm.
protecting, um, but militant,
Mountain. Mhm.
Um, so yeah, there's I do want it for me, it is a practice between staying open and compassionate and hearing the other sides, how they came to believe what they believe, and but also to assert and stay strong and hold the line for democracy. It's, like I understand where you come from. It's not how I define democracy, and this
Mhm.
is not that's it's just not okay. You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I'm not.
And
I don't disagree. We have to also, we each also come from a very particular perspective, and we get to have that perspective too. That gets to be part of the conversation as well. Yeah.
mhm,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Well, this is wonderful. Um, and I thank you so much for coming and speaking. I mean, this is just a little drop in the vast ocean of Kathleen, and all her everything she can share with us. But is there a way to learn more about the your work in Chapel Zen Center? And where
Oh,
can
well,
people find you? I can include the links in the description
yeah.
below.
Yeah. I mean, people are welcome to come visit us at the Chapel Hill Zen Center. Um, and have zazen instruction, and I'm trying to
Mhm.
think what I mean, just chzc.org is our huge website with lots of talks, and the events page tells you all the different things that are going on. And just
Mm.
email us at info@chzc.org and ask questions, and we'll get back to you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, and any formative books also, one or two that come to mind
Zen
for people.
books. People
Yeah,
interested
for
in Zen, I would
yeah.
say Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Suzuki Roshi, by Shunryu Suzuki, and
Mhm.
Opening the Hand of Thought.
Yeah. That was the same author.
No, that's Kosho Uchiyama.
Oh. I have this bell that my friend got for me in Hiroshima, Japan.
Oh,
And
wow.
so a peace bell.
Mm,
I think that they, transformed some of the bomb material
mm,
to make a
mm,
bell. It makes a
mm.
beautiful sound. It says Hiroshima on it.
I can't hear it. Sometimes you have to change the settings for bells to sound
Oh,
right,
oh.
like
So it
like
doesn't come through in my
performance audio.
and
Yeah,
through the microphone.
a little bit. Mm. We actually
Anyway.
participated. That's beautiful. We participated in a huge project with the anniversary of the
Mhm.
dropping of the bombs, where Buddhist temples and centers in the United States did this Jizos for Peace project, where a Jizo is the bodhisattva for children and people traveling, you know, passing through death and etc. And where
Mhm.
we would made these banners and would
Mhm.
make a wish for peace with each Jizo we would draw or stamp. And our Zen Center made this huge banner with like thousands of Jizo images, and it was all brought to Japan, and they were
Oh,
put in stupas in various places. It was a gift a sort of
Mm.
a peace offering, or
Mhm.
a kind of apology,
Yeah,
to try to some
absolutely.
healing.
I think that's beautiful. Reconciliation is so much part
Mm,
of the peace cultivating process. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. That's
Well,
beautiful.
acknowledging what's happened for people,
Oh,
you know.
yep. That's a whole conversation.
Yes, it sure is, isn't it? Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you so much, Kathleen, for your time and sharing with us your just beautiful wisdom and helping us on our healing journeys and helping cultivate peace in the world. And I will be posting this onto YouTube and sharing it on my Instagram and including the links, and you can get to know Kathleen when you would like. And any last message you want to send out to the Christine Moon viewers
Uh,
and
well,
everyone else?
I've really enjoyed talking with you, as I always do.
Thank
If
you.
if there were a last message idea I had, it would be that in our practice, I find carrying a question is really useful. So there's this concept of peace, right? But to
Mm,
carry the question, what would peace look like in this moment, is a way. What would it actually look like in this moment? How
mm,
would it how would it be enacted? How would it be embodied? That, to me, that would be the Zen way of making the world a more peaceful place.
oh, no.
That's a thought that comes to mind.
That's very nice. Because it's almost like it's not so much carrying a question that makes you feel insecure,
No,
because it's not
no.
like I don't know what's happening question. It's not like a I don't know question. It's a question that is for opening.
Yeah. Well, and just to share something, there's what we call don't know mind. That
Mm,
to have don't know mind means to
yeah.
be flexible and open for whatever is coming. So, because nothing is repeated, since it's all unique moments, not knowing is the most realistic approach. Like, so if I believe in peace, asking that question for this moment is going to look different from the answer in that moment, in this moment, in that moment. So
Hmm.
it's never like
Yeah.
answered finally. It's just like moment after moment. What what would it be here? What would it look like here? How can I?
Hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, now I'm rambling, but
No, I love that. That's so true. Each moment is unique. Oh,
yeah.
beautiful. All right. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. These are going to be, they're so helpful in healing. I can already feel it in my body.
Uh, thank,
And I can't wait to see you again. And
I know,
thank
I
you
know.
again.
Thank
And
you.
maybe we could have more peace education interviews with folks that you want to, who you know who would be interested in sharing more wisdom, from the Chapel Zen Center or in the Sangha, it,
Mm,
all the different levels of Sangha. I would love to
yeah.
learn more from folks.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind. Well, thank
Just
you for
just
the
a thought.
opportunity to sit and chat with you. It's a
You're
lovely thing.
welcome. You're welcome. And I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.